In this candid conversation with Emmy Award Winning journalist Nydia Han, we talk about the influential voice saying what you mean for lasting legacy. We also talk about what it means to be an ally and to have solidarity to all of our friends. It's really important that we have this conversation, and I'm so excited that you'll be tuning in. Hello, everyone. I'm Tricia Brouk, the author of The Influential Voice, Saying What You Mean for Lasting Legacy. And I am so deeply honored and excited to introduce our amazing influential voice, support guest, the contributor of the foreword to my book, the amazing Nydia Han. Nydia, thank you so much for being with us today.
It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I congratulate you on The Influential Voice. It is a wonderful book, and it is a gift to the world. So it is my pleasure, Tricia.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. We had a little bit of technical difficulties. We were supposed to be streaming through the Barnes & Noble flagship Rittenhouse store, and which is in Philadelphia. And as you know, Nydia is an anchor in Philadelphia, and I'm going to read her bio in just a second. But I wanted to thank everyone who has had patience with us, because we did a very quick adjustment in order to make this happen through my Facebook pages. So anybody who is going to the Facebook page at the Barnes & Noble store, join us here. And I also want to still thank Barnes & Noble for virtually almost hosting us tonight. We are in support of your books. We're in support of your store, and we are here to support you and to make this virtual book reading possible for everyone who signed up through the Barnes & Noble Facebook page. So thank you, everybody, for finding us and for being an influential voice tonight. Everybody, Nydia Han is 6 ABC's consumer investigative reporter, troubleshooter, and co-anchor of Action News Sunday mornings out of Philadelphia. She is also the creator of the documentary series This Is America, a provocative, fresh look at who we are as Americans. Nydia is an Emmy Award winning journalist committing to getting real results. She's dedicated to exposing scams, protecting consumers, and encouraging businesses and agencies to do the right thing. In her work related to This Is America, Nydia hopes to inspire all of us to get to know each other's unique American stories and check our own biases and act as positive agents of change and unity in our communities. And this is so directly related to what it means to be an influential voice. And we're going to have a conversation today about what it means to have an influential voice. And before we get started, I would love, Nydia, if you have a chance to, or a moment to read anything from the book. Do you have a section that you'd like to share with our audience?
I do. There are so many sections that I would love to share, but I chose this one. And it's in your chapter about limiting beliefs. So there are so many reasons why people don't use their voice, right? Because they're scared, because they're not sure this is the right time, because they think their idea is already out there, or maybe because they don't think they have an idea to share. And so this is what you wrote about that. When you allow limiting beliefs to stand in the way of your powerful voice, you are preventing someone from hearing your very important message. That is irresponsible. That is selfish. You are actually withholding your powerful message from someone in need. Just think what historical messages we may have missed by world leaders and thought leaders, philosophers, activists, and entrepreneurs if limiting beliefs had held them all back. I guarantee that our lives would be missing quite a lot of impact and choices. I want your influential voice to make history too. And then you go on to talk about your own experience in 2019 with your short documentary films. Do you want to share about that, Tricia?
Tell me which ones. I made a few in 2019, Nydia.
So you wrote, upon the conclusion of one of these short documentary films, You're Gorgeous, I Love Your Shirt, an inside look at bullying and mental health, a stranger who'd been watching in the cinema approached me in the lobby. He said, "Thank you for making this film. My wife and I just divorced, and I have been bullied my entire life. I was considering suicide. I've decided I'm going to live." In this moment, you say, I was deeply humbled, not only by the vulnerability this man shared with me, but also that he saw something in the story depicted on the big screen that reminded him he's not alone and that there is hope. This miraculous event is top of mind each and every day for me. We are talking about a human being choosing to live. This is the kind of impact I'm talking about. You have the potential to change and even save a life. And I thought that was so powerful. And that's exactly right. I mean, there are so many moments, I think, for all of us who have big or small platforms who think, I don't know if what I have to say is really going to make an impact. And then, you realize through our own stories, Tricia, that in fact, we do have an important story to tell and an important message, and that certainly it does have a profound impact. Even if it's one person, it makes a difference.
It really does. And thank you for highlighting that moment. I will never forget that moment because we were literally in the theater in LA. I was there with Tanya and Lindsay Harris, the subjects of the film. And it was a very huge theater and a very small documentary. So there were only a few people in the theater. And I remember thinking, wow, there's like a handful of people here who are enjoying this film. I wonder if it's going to mean anything to anyone. And when this man waited for me in the lobby and shared this information, it really meant everything to me and reminded me that I need to always show up and be an influential voice because we can save a life for sure.
On the other hand, there is so much noise out there right now. There's so many platforms. There are so many people who feel like they have something to say. There are a lot of content creators and videos. How do you cut through all of that noise? What do you tell your speakers?
Well, first, it's important to get aligned with values, purpose, and mission. And once you are clear on what your values are, it is not about turning up the volume. It is not about quantity. It's about quality. And it means really speaking from a place of truth and authenticity for impact and not worrying about whether somebody's already shared the message. And there's 7.8 billion people on the planet. One person is meant to hear this. And I think giving yourself permission to communicate effectively, to share your powerful story without worry of consequence. And it's really, again, it's not about turning up the volume. It's about being effective as a communicator. And I think that's where being an influential voice comes in. And it's really about courage, curiosity, and humility.
And I love how you talk about taking the I out of your message and making sure that it's truly relatable and that it is in fact a story and that you are showing your own vulnerability, because that's the way to get people to move in to actually listen, right?
It is. And it's about being vulnerable and telling your story for impact. And when we are relatable and credible and vulnerable, people can understand and see themselves in you, which is part of the power and responsibility of being an influential voice. And I would love to read a little bit from the book and also to hear your thoughts, because you are truly an influential voice in my life. When we met before Speakers Who Dare, you had a massive platform, and then you went on to take a TED stage. And it was such a privilege for me to hear you tell your personal story. And I chose this section of the book specifically in relationship to your work, to your advocacy work, to your platform, This Is America. And I'd love to be able to talk briefly about this afterwards. This is, let's see here. This is the section, Proof of Influential Speech and Testimonies in the book. The U.S. women's soccer team won its 4th World Cup on July 7th in 2019 in France. And according to the New York Times, on July 9th of 2019, FIFA, which is the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, doubled the prize money for this Women's World Cup to $30 million and plans to double it again next time. It sounds amazing, right? Well, it's actually a good old slap in the face to gender parity, because FIFA's contribution to the 32 men's World Cup teams is $400 million. Gender discrimination has never been more in our faces. And unless all women demand equal pay, it means we're agreeing to be less than a man in value and in worth. And in 1993, I was living in New York City a few years after I had moved here, pursuing my dream of becoming a dancer. I joined the Doris Humphrey Dance Company Theater, and I went to college for dance. And Doris Humphrey was a modern dance great who is part of the second generation of groundbreaking female modern dancers, including Martha Graham, Hanya Holm, Ruth St. Dennis, Katherine Dunham, and Isadora Duncan, who are first generation. And all of these women are pioneers who ushered in a new form of dance that protested traditional ballet. They danced barefoot and without tights. And this was revolutionary and truly influential. Being able to bring Ms. Humphrey's choreography to life was an incredible gift for any dancer, and being paid to do it was completely unheard of. I was making $300 a week and loving every second of it. I got to play the lead in her two ecstatic themes, choreographed in 1931, and Lament for Ignacio Sanchez, which she choreographed in 1946. This was historical and important to my career and my soul. And at the time, my best friend, who was also in the company, we took ballet together before rehearsal. We danced together in rehearsal. We roomed together with the company, went on tour. This was a dream come true from any girl from Missouri who grew up on a farm. And on tour in Salt Lake City, my best friend and I got back from rehearsal and were unwinding in our shared hotel room. It was a Friday, so we'd just been given our paychecks, and direct deposit wasn't a thing yet. So we decided to compare our checks and celebrate that we were being paid to actually dance. It was naive and benign moment of jubilation until I realized that my best friend, Andre, he was being paid more than me. He was being paid more than me, and as a soloist in the company, I was dancing more than him. I was in a New York City dance company. This has got to be an accounting error. I couldn't believe it. There's no way. I then confronted the artistic director, and he informed me that he would not increase my salary to Andre's because it was more difficult to find male dancers than women. Blatant discrimination. So I quit. I quit being a soloist in the dance company in New York City, my dream. And then a week later, the artistic director served me with papers that he said was suing me for breach of contract. I wish I had known you then, Nydia. You would have totally been on my side. We'd have been on the together. What did he think he was going to get by suing me? A leotard? I was a dancer. I had no money. So I went straight down to volunteer lawyer for the arts and put together a countersuit for discrimination. And that made him go away. And then I went on to dance with many, many companies. If I had turned my anger into something meaningful and reclaimed my power as an influential voice and silenced myself, that would have caught up with me in years to come in many damaging ways. And I also say that the Equal Rights Amendment, which is an amendment to the Constitution that was introduced by Alice Paul in 1923 and passed on to Congress in 1972, was designed to guarantee equal legal rights for all citizens, regardless of sex. It seeks to end the legal distinctions between men and women in terms of divorce, property, employment, and other matters. And I am proud to say that New York, along with 18 other states, ratified the ERA in 1972. This ratification, however, has been staggered throughout the past 48 years, and Missouri, the state I'm from, has still not ratified the amendment. And this means that many young girls growing up in that state are being told they are not worth the same as the boys they share a classroom with. Words have incredible power to create hope and healing as well. In fact, Harvey Milk, the first openly gay elected official in the state of California, deemed his historical speech about unity and shattering stereotypes the hope speech. And I'm going a little bit fast here. I want you to absolutely spend time on this chapter, but I want to move to the section where a USA Today analysis of 64 rallies that the US President Trump held since 2017 found that when discussing immigration, he used the word invasion 19 times. He used the word animal 34 times and the word killer 36 times. In addition to a database website FactBase, he used the expression China virus more than 29 times between March 19th and March 30th. This was not a mishap or a careless joke. These words of xenophobia, extremism, fear, and hate were being spoken from the highest office in our country. And it is the kind of speech that wounds humanity on a level that will take decades to heal. And we are currently in that process of healing. If you think about our journey together to make you the influential voice, you fully understand what I'm talking about here, which is the impact. And this is not about politics. This is not about sides. This is not about laws. This is about honoring and respecting the power of speech and bringing dignity back to soulful communication. And choosing to use the word invasion has consequences. And choosing to stay silent also has consequences. And this is another reason that your voice matters. And I share this because the work that you are doing in the world, Nydia, and the work that you and I do together as collaborators and friends is really paving the way to have these dialogues and these conversations as influential voices. And I want to just thank you for inviting me into your community so that I can support your community, and for giving me the permission to also have these conversations.
Well, your support and your solidarity are so meaningful and so powerful. I mean, one of the things that I've been talking a lot about is allyship. Indeed, we have seen a incredible uptick in attacks, physical and verbal, against Asian Americans. There has been this rise in hate against our community because we're being erroneously blamed for the coronavirus. But what I say is that the coronavirus is just the recent trigger. And in fact, the racism and the hate that we're seeing today is deeply rooted in anti-Asian sentiment and racism that we've encountered throughout our history. And so it is really important that I think we use our voices, we amplify the stories of Asian Americans, good and bad, and make sure that everyone acknowledges that this racism exists against our community, and that we finally stand up and say something instead of ignoring it. For so long, because of the stereotype of this model minority, that Asians are the model minority, while other minorities are somehow inferior because of this model minority myth. I think it has put Asian Americans in this box of people of privilege and entitlement and people who don't need help. And thus it has been thought that racism against our community does not exist, and that we are not a community that needs help. But we know that we are very much, and especially today, a community in crisis. I mean, there have been 3,800 hate incidents against Asian Americans recorded and reported in just the past year. And we know that those numbers do not paint the entire picture, because a lot of times with these incidents against Asian Americans, the incidents are not actually reported. There's a language barrier sometimes. Sometimes there isn't a real trust in police. Sometimes people don't know how to report. And so for a variety of reasons, we know that even the incidents that we report are not covering the breadth of what's happening. So I really do appreciate your solidarity. And, I too, as I've said on some of your programs, am really trying to show up for other communities as well. I have posted a lot about Black Lives Matter. I don't use the hashtag Asian Lives Matter because I think it unnecessarily co-opts the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think it is critical right now that we all stand shoulder to shoulder to end this hate, because, it impacts all of us. Today it's Asian Americans we're talking about, but tomorrow it's going to be another group.
Absolutely. And I think that being able to have these conversations will, in my hope, give everyone the opportunity to feel that they have permission, that they have the tools, that they have the voice to step forward and to have these conversations. And I was having a conversation with my friend Mark Sefton today on Clubhouse, that it's not about perfection. It's not about getting everything right. It's about being curious, asking questions. How am I part of the problem? How can I be part of the solution? And it's not asking you to tell me how I'm supposed to be. I need to do my own research as an adult. It is about having the conversations and saying, okay, what don't I know? And how can I learn that for myself?
Yeah, in your book, you talk about how you're not trying to convince someone of something. You're not trying to sell someone an idea. You're really trying to inspire someone to think about a different possibility.
Right.
And And I think that's really powerful too, because I think if we approach people with the intention of changing their minds or getting them to see things our way, we may not get that far. But I think if instead we approach people with genuine curiosity, we have an opportunity there to actually open up a dialogue about our differences and advance what may actually be our shared goals.
And that's what you do so beautifully with This Is America.
I certainly try. And, that was quite a journey. So for people who don't know, almost 4 years ago now, I was walking on a street in Philadelphia and a woman yelled, "This is America," at me. And that unleashed in me this anger that I didn't even know I was carrying around. But I thought that she yelled, "This is America," at me because she didn't think my Asian face belonged to that of an American. And after a lifetime of feeling like I was seen as the forever foreigner, I decided to respond, and I did so publicly in a Facebook video. That video ended up going viral, and there were tens of thousands of comments, and not all with people who agreed with my "This is America" message, basically taking ownership of those words and calling for people to understand and see that Americans look like me, they look like you, they look like all kinds of people, and that we have really enriched the fabric of this country with our diversity. And so I went on this path then to understand and talk to the people who did have a different point of view, who did not agree with me. And when I did that, I realized that, first of all, I had come into those conversations with my own biases, and that I had my own surprises, and I had some learning to do too. And so I talk about this guy named Wayne. He really fueled the flames on Facebook. And so I decided that I wanted to talk to him. He ghosted me. Like, we text messaged for a while, we emailed for a while, and then when I asked him if he would meet with me in person and talk to me on camera for this docuseries that I was producing, spinning off that This Is America experience, he stopped talking to me and communicating with me. So I just showed up at his house one day. And when I did, I was surprised. It turns out we have a lot in common. We have kids the same ages. We both love basketball. We have the same hopes and dreams for our families and for our futures. And he told me that when I approached him on email about his comment to my Facebook video, that he at that point then actually watched my video in its entirety. And after he did that and really heard and listened to my message, he didn't like his own reflection in the computer. And he decided that instead of just responding to people, especially people who don't look like him, out of this knee-jerk reaction of fear, that he was actually going to take the time to just listen and try to understand other people's experiences and where they come from. So he ended up being on his own real journey of self-reflection. And so it was really a great conversation. And I still talk to him today. I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago through email. So
that's so amazing. And for everybody watching today, I want to highlight that Nydia was an influential voice by having the courage to not confront, but to converse with this person and to have this conversation. And I'll share another story from the book, which is I was coming home from the Barclays Center. I had the privilege of being at Michelle Obama's Becoming event in New York. And I was coming home from the Barclays Center around 10 p.m. It was still safe. The subway was full. And I was on the subway, and there was 5 young white men, boys in the subway near the one side of the car. And I was sitting in the middle of the car, and it was a full train, and they were talking loud enough for everyone on the train to hear. And they were speaking about a girl that was a classmate, and they were speaking about her very very inappropriately and loudly. And I thought to myself, do I stay silent? No, I can't stay silent. Am I in danger? No, I'm not in danger. Will I speak to them directly and not to the entire train? Absolutely. So I got up, I walked over to them, and I said, "Excuse me, you are speaking against this young girl. You're speaking violence against her. You're speaking violence against me, and therefore you're speaking violence against everyone else on this train." And they gave me a hard time. I was this old lady telling these boys what to do, right? And what happened was they stopped. And my hope was that one of those 5 boys in the future would stop that the next time it happened, because I was able to point out why it was wrong and why it was violent, and to potentially give one of those boys permission to be an influential voice within his community in the future, to potentially say, hey guys, that's not cool. And that's why speaking out and having the courage in a dignified, respectful way to point something out to somebody is really stepping into the role of being an influential voice. And I'm not saying put yourself in danger ever. I'm not saying put yourself at risk ever. I'm saying when appropriate, speak out in order to be an influential voice. I'd love your thoughts on that, Nydia.
Well, and I love that example because it really speaks to the fact that you don't have to have a large platform. You don't have to be on television. You don't have to be a film director in order to be an influential voice. Every single person can be an influential voice within their own communities, circles, classrooms, social settings, workplaces, you name it. And I actually think that, for instance, if we really want to change the narrative for Asian Americans, we need those influential voices in schools, in the boardroom, in the sports team, in all kinds of settings. And we need people to really speak out, even when it's an incident, or especially when it's an incident of casual racism, right? I mean, for so long, Asian Americans have been the butt of jokes, and no one seems to call that out. And we know what happens now when people do call it out. So for instance, there was a hoagie shop in Philadelphia that posted a racist menu item. They called macaroni and cheese covered in Chinese chili garlic sauce COVID Mac. Well, when people called that out, saying that is not funny, that is racist, and that is not okay, the menu item was taken down. And frankly, the restaurant was shamed, and the owner was sent the message that this is not acceptable. There was a SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild. So the local Philadelphia chapter, this is a labor union that represents actors and artists and broadcast journalists and radio personalities. And when one of the board members for the Philadelphia chapter posted an anti-Asian racist meme on social media, no one said anything until my friend Denise Nakano and another one of my friends amplified that story. I did too. And then that racist meme was taken down by that board member. The board member ultimately resigned, and SAG-AFTRA put out a much more powerful statement than they had before. And he's actually been replaced by a Chinese American actor who lives in Delaware named Lyman Chen. So we know that when we call out these things, even seemingly small, minor incidents like the woman yelling, "This is America" at me, that's such a minor incident that struck a major chord, because these are the kinds of things that happen every day. I think it's when we respond to those everyday incidents that we can really advance the conversation and make change.
I love that so much. And for everybody who's watching, feel free to share questions in the comments so that we can answer them. Being able to highlight just now the microaggressions and how they are happening all the time. And by being silent, by ignoring them, by allowing our own unconscious bias to get in the way, we are preventing that forward momentum towards equality. And I think it's really important that we think about how we were brought up, that we think about, wait a minute, am I having a racist thought, right? We have to be conscious. Was that okay? Was that inappropriate? Was what my friend said okay or inappropriate? And to absolutely to call it out. We must be vocal as influential voices. And again, it's not about confronting people. It's about asking the question and saying, this is not okay, and this is why. What else would you like to say to our listeners today, Nydia, about being an influential voice?
Just that I think it's so important that people do recognize you don't have to do something big. You don't necessarily have to be on stage or writing something for the newspaper, but those things that you can do in your everyday, in your circle and in your community, those things do have a big impact. And, it does take courage. I think sometimes, especially in those real life moments, right? It takes courage, and just know that, it's worth it. Yeah, I did sort of hesitate before I responded to that driver who yelled, "This is America" at me. And now I'm so glad that I said something, and it really taught me a lesson that there is power in my own voice. And then Tricia, of course, you helped me maximize the power of my own voice in helping me figure out how to be a good storyteller, how to be on stage, how to overcome stage fright. I mean, it's funny because so many people thought when I did your show, Speakers Who Dare, that would be a piece of cake for me because I speak for a living. I'm on television every day. But that was a very different experience for me, as was Tedx, because I'm not used to talking on that kind of stage to a huge live audience like that, without notes, without a teleprompter. And most importantly, I'm not used to telling my own story. And so, I'm very much used to being in the background and telling other people's stories. So it took a lot of learning for me. And as you know, a lot of sort of pushing and motivation and support to get me to the point where I was able to be a more influential voice in a more public way. And so I thank you for that. And I'm glad that you're helping other people do that too through your book.
Thank you, Nydia. And I want to highlight, everyone needs to go watch Nydia's TEDx Philadelphia talk. You can find it if you go to TED.com. And I also think that there is something about having the courage to speak vulnerabilities around race without any emotion for impact. And you did that so beautifully in both your Speakers Who Dare and your TEDx talk. And what I remember so specifically is you talking about being called a Twinkie. And I remember being devastated by that. I was physically devastated hearing you tell that story. And I needed to hear that. That was really important for me to hear it, to feel it, and to go through that experience with you. And I think that is also such a powerful testament to what it means to being an influential voice.
I think it's important as we look to stop the hate, and that we really are honest and very transparent about our own biases, about the racism within our own communities. And yeah, so the Twinkie story is, I was so excited. I grew up in a really homogenous town. Very few people looked like me. So I was really excited to go to college where there were a lot of Asian Americans. And I joined this Korean American group, only to realize that some of the people in that group were calling me a Twinkie. So basically, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. It was very hurtful to me. And I, again, think that if we're going to call out racism, then we have to really think about how we see ourselves and how we see each other.
Amazing. Well, it is definitely both of our bedtime. And I want to thank you so much for spending an evening with me talking about what it means to be an influential voice. The foreword to the book that you wrote is so beautiful and so generous, and I'm truly honored to be your friend, to be your colleague, and to have you in my life, Nydia. It is absolutely a privilege.
Well, the generous person is you, and I learn from you every day, and I thank you. And I'm so glad that you wrote this book so other people can experience your gifts and your wisdom and your generosity. So thanks for having this tonight. It was really fun to talk to you.
My absolute pleasure. And if you have not gotten the book, or you would like to get another copy for friends, family, loved ones, theinfluentialvoicebook.com has links to Barnes & Noble where you can grab this book. Thank you so much for hosting the event tonight, Barnes & Noble. We made it work. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Everybody who was on the comments, we will absolutely go back into Facebook and to share everything. It's so many amazing people are here today. Nydia, your voice matters, and I listen to it every day, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Tricia, take care.
If you desire your copy of The Influential Voice, just hop on over to theinfluentialvoicebook.com and grab your copy today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscription button and notification bell so you get access to all of my latest videos. And please share what your thoughts are in the comments. I look forward to responding to all of you. Big love.